All right.
Welcome, everybody.
Let me just.
We're definitely live.
Yeah, it is live.
Hey.
Yeah.
We'll edit that bit out when we go online.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to. I don't even remember which show is this.
14, something around that.
No, I think it's even more. No? I think we already passed 15.
Really?
Yeah. But tonight we have a special guest with us. We've been trying to get him for so long. I think was one of my dreams to be able to bring you to London for the real SNE show. Now everything is possible online. So
luckily, COVID has saved us a lot of money.
Yeah. And also made possible to talk to anyone we want nowadays.
Almost.
It's a lot easier.
Almost. Yeah, almost. So let's introduce Justin Coney. You don't really need an introduction, no?
Oh.
Pretty much everyone know who you are. So we're just going to start with our silly question, ask what each one is drinking tonight.
Okay.
What time is for you?
So it's only 2 p.m. I'm in Austin, Texas, which is why I'm drinking an herbal tea, unfortunately. I wish I could say it's just straight whiskey, but with election day, it should be probably.
Well, I think you have to save that for later.
Yes. Save for the late night.
Yeah.
What are you drinking, James?
I'm drinking a beer called the Old Peculiar from Theakston's, which is not too far away. Yeah.
What kind of beer is that?
It's kind of like, it's an ale, but it's kind of like quite a dark ale. But it's got this really cool little picture of, where's my camera? Of like a little monk doing something.
Oh, nice.
It looks kind of dodgy, but it's not. But it's really good.
Oh, nice. Sounds good.
What about you, Thiago?
I'm just drinking water tonight.
Oh.
I need a little break. Yeah.
I feel like an alcoholic because I'm quite a social drinker, and I feel like I'm just out by my own sorrow with my sorrows.
I was very close to cracking open an IPA or something, but I have too much to do this afternoon. So.
Yeah.
I mean, what could go wrong? I mean, it only makes things more creative and better anyway.
Right.
Don't say what can go wrong on an election day.
Yeah, no kidding. You're tempting the gods, right?
Don't say that. Let's touch wood. Cool.
Shall we talk a bit about your history? Like where did you start? Because you started out, from what I know anyway, it was your tween blog.
Yeah.
But was there anything before that as well?
Yeah. So, the reason I got into the whole like web world, because it feels like there's like only like 2 or 3 ways back in the day that people got into the whole world of motion. One was through like the web, and the other was like graphic design, and then I guess some people came over from animation, but that I think really started to happen a little later. But I was one of the web people, so I was getting into my undergraduate degree in creative writing, which is just useless. I mean, it was a fun degree, but I was freaking out basically. By the time my senior year was coming around, like the summer before that, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And my friend was like, hey, I'm working in Austin. I was living in Houston, Texas. He's like, I'm working in Austin for this startup, and like, they're just going crazy. This was like 1999, right? So like 2000.
.com boom era, right?
Exactly. And so I knew a little bit of HTML. I'd like taught myself some stuff, in college and high school. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'll go do web design at this company. And I thought I was going to be a millionaire because, it was the .com bubble. And it was a good internship. I was there all summer and it went great. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do my last year of school. I'll come back and I'll have this great job and I'll be a millionaire. And of course, that was the year the bubble burst, and that company basically went under. They're gone. And I came out of school and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I knew I liked Austin. So I did move to Austin, but I was like, shit, I mean, I have no idea. I wasn't really, I was like a self-taught designer, and, I knew how to write, which I guess was useful. So I somehow got lucky. I got a job at the University of Texas at Austin. So the University of Texas at Austin is a massive institution. It's like 60,000 students, has its own power generator, has its own jail. It's a
Some
it is a
jail?
huge,
What, really?
yeah, it's its own jail. Yeah, I don't know.
Man.
I don't know who they put there. But you know, it's this huge research institution, and so I got a job working for the College of Engineering. The College of Engineering is one of the biggest, you know, schools at the University of Texas, really well funded. And my job was to take like new technology and then working with instructional designers and professors, like figure out how can you make it useful? Like how can you make something cool? So I got to play with a bunch of stuff. Like we had not an unlimited budget, but we bought all sorts of crazy toys. And so I got to do more web stuff. The coolest project I did there was this guy. It was literally an astronaut. He'd been to space twice.
Wow.
He was also a cardiologist and he was an electrical engineer. So like,
See, like, yeah, but I've got
underachiever.
creative writing.
Yeah, I was like, I can write a poem. And yeah, I was like super intimidated. He was a really cool guy. He had created this device. It was like this little box, and it was an artificial heartbeat device. So you would get a stethoscope, like a real stethoscope, and you would put it on this device, and it would randomly create different heartbeats, and it would even like create a little like push like on your finger, so you could simulate a pulse.
Wow.
It was amazing. He was trying to teach doctors it's called auscultation, which is the art of taking a pulse and listening to your stethoscope. You can diagnose or at least begin to diagnose like a huge number of problems with auscultation. So he had made this device, but he had no interface. There was no like screen experience. There was nothing, you know, and I thought, okay, I'll do it. I had no idea what I was doing. So I learned like Macromedia Director. I learned it by, I had to like ship off. This was before lynda.com, before the website. I bought like a set of like 6 DVDs. They were probably CD-ROMs actually. that had like tiny little videos on them, and it was like, here's how to learn Director. So I learned Director, and I built this thing. I did a lot of cool stuff. I did motion graphics projects. There was the first time that I learned about motion graphics. This guy I was working with, Juan Diaz, he sent me a link to mograph.net, the message board, which I mean, I think if you're like kind of OG, you know, you know that board. It's
still an amazing resource.
Exactly. It's an amazing resource. It was amazing back then. It's amazing now. A lot of great people on there. Back then, like people were posting all these videos, you know, little like 320 by 240 pixel postage stamp videos. You know, all the studios. Yeah. You remember this stuff? Yeah. And the one I remember making it like just flipped my lid was MK12 Ultra Love Ninja. I saw Ultra Love Ninja, which is the one where it's like the ninja jumping between the trees and stuff.
Classic.
And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, what the hell is this? I had no idea. Oh, and Nando Costa's Macho Box. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one, but there were a few like that. And I was like, what is this? I didn't know what it was. And I was like, I want to do this. You know, I have to do this.
It's kind of funny that, you know, we talk about these like classic projects that inspired us as if they were like classic records, and it's such a niche thing.
It totally is. It totally is. I wonder, like, for the newer generation, what those projects were for them. My guess is like Buck's Metamorphosis, you know, the thing they did with the the crazy for the good books thing. The, you know, that has to be one of them, but I don't know, maybe not. But for me, it was MK12, Eyeball, Lobo, Psyop, Buck, actually, like very early Buck. And then a little bit later, like others like Hush and all that. So I started collecting these because, you know, the message board was fine, but it was like pretty noisy and a lot of stuff going on. So I started collecting these videos, started collecting studios. And because it was 2004 at that time, or 3, I had a blog because I lived in Austin. Everybody has a blog. It's like being in a band. So I had a blog.
You had to have one to get in. It's like a visa requirement.
Yeah, exactly right. They check it at the door. So I guess I started putting videos up on the blog, and it was like a 2-column layout by default using a CMS called Text Pattern. And I was like, I don't know what to put in the second column. So I started putting the studios over there that I was, you know, learning about. I didn't know shit about it, right? And I just started putting it there. And then I started doing this for myself, really, just to keep track of stuff. And then like a few weeks later, I for whatever reason, I checked the web traffic, and it was like there were like 10,000 people visited this month, and I was like, what how, like, and they were like all over the place, like Thailand and the UK, and I was like, what the hell? And then so I just kept doing my thing, and then I noticed like it was going up and up and up and up, like it was soon like 100,000 visits a month. And And then people were asking to like get involved. I remember the first people that reached out were Cody Cobb, who was at the time, I don't even think he started. Digital Kitchen. This is before he went there. He was basically like, I don't know if he even finished high school. That kid was a genius, probably still is. And he was teaching himself 3D. I think he was learning Softimage or something.
Wow.
And then his buddy, Chris Palazzo, who's now at Buck, who's a CD at Buck, or an ACD, I think. They were like some of the first people, and like, hey, can we like post? And I was like, I guess, why not? Sure. And then so over time, we started getting more and more contributors, as James knows, and I guess everybody knows. And so when I decided, I had been like doing web design this whole time, and then I decided I'm gonna get serious about this whole motion graphics thing. And for me, getting serious means like going to school, because I'm a nerd. That's how I do things. So I decided to get an MFA at SCAD, at the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia. At that time, I think the only other school that had like a master's program was Otis in LA. SVA might have had something, but it was more like animation. They were just like 1-year programs. SCAD had like a full 2-year MFA. And I wanted to get the MFA because I thought at some point I'd like to be able to teach. And if you have an MFA, it makes it a lot easier to teach, just, usually, not always.
I guess because it was like, as an industry, it was in such an infancy back then as well. So to find a course that had any scope of motion graphics was probably quite tricky.
It's absolutely true. And I mean, it's pretty visionary of SCAD to see that early on. They've done a good job of trying to, keep up with things since then too. But I didn't know who they were. I was like, what it's Savannah, where is Savannah? And I remember going to visit, and I went as a prospective student. I went to visit in 2005. And I remember going to this like little like luncheon thing, it was like all the other prospective students, some faculty, and then some students who were like ambassadors, they called them. And there was this one student who was super hot. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sit at that table. Like, I had no idea. Like, it turned out it was the right table. It was the motion graphics-y animation table. And I had a good time, like chatting with her and chatting with the professors and stuff. But that woman who was at that table is my wife now, and we have a kid. And so we met during this little prospective student visit.
It's kind of nice as a motion graphics connection though, because normally with like husbands and wives, it's like, what's motion graphics? I can't be asked to explain to you. It's going to take too long, or there's
exactly.
Not that understanding.
Yeah. No, it is really nice, and we've worked together a lot. Like we worked together actually in school on projects, and then we worked.
That's quite risky. That can be very risky.
Yeah, well, there were times when we just didn't get much done, and then we'd be like, "Oh shit!" Because the thing about Savannah is you can escape to the beach in 20 minutes drive. You can be at the beach, and so and you didn't have class on Fridays. Well, they do that now, I think, but back then it was very rare. You could easily set it up so you didn't have class on Fridays, so it was pretty easy to like slack off. I mean, I loved it. It was great. And Savannah's a weird town. It's like a time warp. It's like hopping back 50 years, and all the good and the bad. I mean, there's kind of a weird racial segregation. There's like a real problem. And so it was bizarre to be there. As a student, you're in the bubble, you don't really notice it. But when I started at SCAD, I went back and started in April of 2006. I was like, okay, I'm going to relaunch Tween, and that is going to be motionographer. And I just thought like, okay, Tween was like justincohn.com/tween. That was the URL for it. I was like, that seems kind of, especially since there were so many contributors and stuff, it felt like kind of weird.
It's its own thing.
Yeah. And I remember floating the name of motionographer. I don't know if you were involved yet, James. You're pretty OG. You went back pretty far though.
Quite, yeah.
Yeah. But I remember floating the name by, and like Babe Elliott Baker, who had like he had like created our initial like logo and stuff. He was like, that name is not good. It's too long. It's too hard to say. And I was like, no, you're wrong. I just made up a new word, motionographer. I was so convinced.
You just wanted the notoriety of like coining a phrase.
Right. When it gets into Webster's dictionary, I can just die happy. It's funny. I've actually seen the term motionographer used. I've seen people put it on business cards, like motion graphics people. But the more interesting thing I've seen is it's been used to describe like people who do dance for a living, like choreography and stuff.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, which I think is awesome. Tween. So tween was called tween because that's an animation term, the in-between frames, you know?
Yeah.
But I would get emails once every month that thought it was an outlet for psychology news for tweens, like kids who are not quite teenagers, so like 11 and 12-year-old kids. And I was always tempted to like pretend, just play along and like, yeah, tell me what your problem is, you know.
You could damage a lot of lives by doing that.
Oh yeah, totally. super reckless. So I launched Motionographer in April 2006. And that was, I mean, it was really weird. It was immediately like well received. There's a lot of traction. And because of tween, you know, it already had some name recognition. So I started getting invited to like go to conferences and things like that. And
you feel like Paris Hilton or something.
Yeah, man, I was not prepared. It was super bizarre, you know, to be, and I was in school too. So I was like, I was telling somebody this the other day, like I was like living two lives. It was like I had all my schoolwork and I was trying to be a motion designer. I was trying to like design and animate and learn, you know, 3D because I like CG quite a bit. And that was going okay. Like I'm not that great of a designer. I'm okay. And I'm worse now. You know, it was going okay, but then Motionographer was like kind of blowing up. It was getting like, by this time, like 1 million hits a month or whatever. Like, wow. I don't remember how many uniques, but like a lot of unique visitors. And I was like, man, how do I handle this? And sometimes I would have to like choose between finishing an assignment or writing an article, like a feature article, an interview with somebody. I remember I interviewed, one of the first big interviews I did was with it was with Todd and Kylie, directors at PSYOP. And I was like, I have to do this. I got to get it up. And I was like, I just didn't do whatever my assignment was. My teachers kind of knew, and they were like, well, okay, you know, they'd give me like a pass sometimes. But I got invited like pretty quickly to go speak at this conference called ProMax BDA, which in the broadcast world and the TV world, it's like kind of well known.
Yeah, it's quite
I think.
a big deal.
It's quite big. Yeah.
Okay, you guys know it. Yeah.
ProMax is quite big.
Okay, yeah, I had only like heard of it a little bit, and so I got invited by a buddy of mine who'd been like following tween for a while, and he just interviewed me. It was a small room. It was like maybe 60 people there, but I went up to New York for that. And when I was there, this guy, Carlos Alasmar, who was working at ABC News at the time, he was a graphics director for ABC News. He was like, hey, you want to come check out ABC? I was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. So I went, I mean, it was mind blowing. You know, I'd never been to a TV studio before. I'd never seen a graphics department before. And so he and I struck up a friendship, and like within a few months, he was like, you know, I've got an idea. I want to do a festival. There's so much stuff we could do. Let's partner up, you know? And so we created basically the company Motionographer. We had another name for the company, but like, he really took it. It was just a hobby until he got involved, and it became like an enterprise, and it became like this bigger thing. And so for about, 12 years, we did all sorts of different things together. The F5 festivals. I directed the first one of those, and then kind of took more of an EP role on the other two. And then he's still doing some now, I think. I don't know what he's doing now, but we did the Motion Awards we launched together and all that. But about 4 years ago, a lot of things had happened in both of our lives, and I needed a change. I'd been doing Motionographer full time. Actually, I left PSYOP, where I had been for about 3 or 4 years. I left PSYOP to do Motionographer full time, which was good and bad, but I was definitely stuck, and I felt like it was time for me to just like walk away. And we talked about different ways of structuring it. In the end, it made sense for him to just take the whole thing. So he's running it now. I don't know anything that's really going on with it anymore. I think the editor is a woman named Bevan. I think she's still the editor, who I worked with briefly at NBC. I never worked with her directly, but I knew her from NBC, where Carlos later worked. She's great. She's amazing. But they're doing their own thing, and I went off on my own little journey, a little walkabout kind of thing. I got into web development like hardcore because I thought that's what I wanted to do. I've always liked building websites. So my buddy had a startup here in Austin. His wife had created a startup, and he was basically working for her, and was like, hey, or working with her. he was like, hey, you want to help us? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't really know what I'm doing. He's like, yeah, it's okay. So I figured out a lot of stuff.
That's like a metaphor for life in general, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really,
exactly.
being an adult is basically just faking it until you figure, oh, okay, that works.
Man, it's true. It's true. It's painful and exhausting, but true. And he, thankfully, he let me learn so much. And he was a great mentor too. He's a super sharp guy. So I built a lot of things, built like an e-commerce platform, built all this other stuff. But I built some stuff that I always wanted to build, kind of with motionographer, but I didn't have the structure or the guidance to do it, I think. And so that was a really good experience. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I got this opportunity with Gensler, the largest architecture firm in the world. They are really big, actually. They're the like the next one down is like half the size of Gensler, measured either in revenue or measured in licensed architects. Gensler is massive. I mean, in any city you live in, chances are they've designed several buildings there, and stadiums and airports and crap like that.
It's kind of funny, like working for a large architectural firm. So I did quite a few projects with a large architectural firm, and it's like you don't realize this stuff, like until you work with a company like that. You say, oh, there's a billboard, it's got like their little logo in the corner. It's like, and there's another one and another one and another one. It's like, oh man,
you start to see them.
Yeah, it's like Rothschild or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you really do. So it was weird. They offered me a job that ended up being, I thought I was applying to I don't remember a design lead job. And then they kept interviewing me. Oh, there's a lot of interviews for a design lead job. And then they were like, well, actually, this guy is going to transfer to another region. We want you to be design director. I didn't really know what that meant. I was like, okay, cool. It turns out that it meant that it was kind of like I was running a little business for a region, the South Central region, which is just Texas. Texas is so massive. There's so much business that's its own region. It's the only one that's a one state region, I think. And so I had a small team that I inherited, including my wife. She actually was on the team. And so I was thrown in the deep end a bit. I mean, I threw myself in the deep end, I suppose. I had to learn a lot about, working within a giant organization, 6,000 people, $1.5 billion in revenue every year. I had to learn like how to, internally how to pitch business to build relationships with architects and interior designers. Because I was working on the digital media team, right? And they didn't know like what the hell we did, or why we were even there in some cases. Like what was the value, that we were bringing. So I spent a lot of time learning how to do that and doing that, and then pitching to clients, right? It was also really difficult because you're within an architecture firm. A lot of times your clients are not the people you're used to talking to, if you do design work. We talk to like marketing people and advertising people usually, right? These people they're facilities people. They're people who like buy and sell real estate and who, oversee the construction of buildings. So a lot of times, you might have a really cool idea for a project and they're like, well, it looks expensive. Like, oh shit, okay, well, I mean, it is expensive, and so you kind of had to find your way. Yeah, exactly. But we all got lucky, like in our region, and I got lucky personally because we had this existing relationship with AT&T. So AT&T is headquartered in downtown Dallas, and they've been there for a while. And the buildings are kind of old. They're like brutalist architecture buildings, if you know what that is. It's very like blocky,
Yeah.
And they knew they needed to make a change because AT&T at the time was about to has since acquired Warner Media, which is, they overnight turned into essentially like a media company. They went from being a telecom to a media company, competing with, Netflix and Comcast and Disney and all the others because of that acquisition of Warner Media, which included, HBO and CNN, a bunch of different properties, tons of properties, and including movies and stuff too. So they were like, oh crap, we have an identity crisis or something. They didn't call it that, but they were like, how do we?
And said you can't call it that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I wanted to so bad. So they hired Gensler to rethink their headquarters, and the transformation is stunning. Like I thought, I don't think it's gonna work. Like they had this, their office downtown used to have kind of a park in between all these buildings. And the architects at Gensler had a vision that was like, no, this should be a public space. Like you need to open this up, embrace this, line it with restaurants and high-end retail and like, you know, and so that was the vision. And lo and behold, like many years, 3-4 years later, it's basically done now. And that is totally worked. Like when I was going there to work on projects they call it the Discovery District, it was always packed. During COVID, it was packed with people. On Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights, like over 1,000 people in this, you know, public plaza easily.
You know, you've done a good job when you're responsible for a spike in COVID cases.
Yeah, it's everybody's metric for success. So I got lucky because I got thrown on just by sheer luck of timing. I got to be the creative director on the Gensler side, the creative director for this, we call it the Globe, which is this interactive sculpture, 25-foot tall, brushed aluminum sculptures, beautiful thing that it's lined with LEDs on the inside of it. It has 6 LiDAR scanners that can detect when people are coming in and when they're moving around in the space, has 20-something speakers, you know, all throughout. And so we kind of knew, like the architects had designed the structure and they did a beautiful job. They used this kind of algorithmic approach to generate this really wild structure that was evocative of the AT&T logo, but really its own thing.
We've got
unfortunately,
yeah. We've got you sent us a video of this.
Yeah.
Should I share this? Should I share the screen when you're talking on top so you?
Yeah, live narration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys going to share it?
Yeah.
We'll share.
Cool.
Wait.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just 1 second. Let me make sure you guys got the audio. There we go.
Well, if we're going to talk over the top, it doesn't really need the audio.
Yeah, that's cool. We can. Yeah. And I think now I'll have to see if this video is available anywhere else to share it out with people.
It does look really pretty. I really like it.
Yeah.
I love physical interactive stuff. It's so nice.
Yeah. And when we got on with this project, really all we knew is that it was going to look like this. We knew that the lights were there, these LEDs were there. We knew that there were speakers. Beyond that, it was a blank slate. We had chosen a couple partners to work with. So for the programming and the visuals that you see, we worked with Float 4. I don't know if you've heard of them before, but they're incredible. Based out of Montreal, like a lot of these people are, you know, Moment Factory's there, several others are there. And Float 4, they're just awesome. They're like a great nimble shop that they do a lot of installation work. And so they were kind of like our development partner. And then for the sound design and music, we worked with Man-Made Music. So Man-Made Music has worked with AT&T a ton, and they know the brand and all that, and they were great. And they've done some interactive work. So the 3 teams, like Gensler, Man-Made, and Float 4, we all worked on this together for over a year, really. And it's driven by Touch Designer. And there's a CMS it's also tied into that was created by Moment Factory. Moment Factory did a lot of the infrastructure for the plaza. So as you can see here, like, you know, when there's more people, it switches into different modes. This mode is kind of a watercolory paint effect. Oh, they've unlocked an Easter egg here. When there's
is that the epilepsy Easter egg?
Yeah, exactly. We should have a warning on a sign outside. There are a couple different Easter eggs that you can unlock. When it goes into group mode, it's kind of like a bit of a dance party mode, and the music's like higher energy. And at this point, the LiDAR scanners can't really keep up with how many people are in there. So it's doing programmatically, like it's shifting through some things, but it feels like you're still interacting with it, even though you really aren't. But this is only one of 3 modes we created for this. But this is kind of the prettiest one. It's the more like chilled out one. Here we're showing just that, you know, these LiDAR scanners work with a bunch of different, you know, sizes of people and differently abled people and all that, which is really important for AT&T. Yeah, so this was an amazing project to work on, but in some ways it confirmed what I suspected when I took the job at Gensler, which is that I love being involved in these projects, but you know, I don't know if I'm really the best person for this kind of stuff all the time. Maybe everybody feels that way because you're doing something that's never been done before, and you know, there's a lot of doubt. And if you looked at what I did over the years that I was at Gensler, if any of you, like if you guys looked at it, you would say you weren't a design director, you were an EP, an executive producer, and which is true. I basically was. And so I kind of, that all started to become clear. And I was like, okay. And then COVID was happening. So COVID obviously is like completely clobbered architecture, because why would you invest in offices and new buildings when people aren't using them and may not be going back for,
people don't know what the new landscape will be like anyway. Like, will everybody go back to offices and all that kind of side of things? I mean,
yes, exactly. Oops, there goes my camera.
There's your camera.
I'm gonna switch. There it goes. Oh, that was the good. We had our 30 minutes here.
That was a good run.
Yeah, right. Let me switch to my crappy webcam here. Let's see if this works. There we go. More of a wide angle lens. Yeah, COVID. I mean, I don't know if the worst of it for the architecture industry is done yet, because there's a lag, you know, like people don't renew their leases and stuff, and it takes a while for the business reality to set in. But I was seeing the writing on the wall. I was like, okay, we were doing fine, like business wise, like we were making do, largely because of AT&T, but also we had some other clients that we built relationships with. And I just looked at what I was going to be doing and I thought, this really isn't me, you know, it's not a good fit. And meanwhile, you know, Buck, I'd been talking to them for a long time. You know, I've known several people there for a while. Lots of ex-motionographer and tween people at Buck.
Like having interviews like, oh, we didn't post our stuff, so we can not go, we have to go somewhere else.
Right, exactly. So they had reached out and they had this idea of like hiring me as a communications director. And initially I was like, ooh, I don't know, like press releases and stuff. And they were like, no, like it's Buck. Like Buck doesn't do press releases, you know? No. So, you know, and this is true for a lot of the shops, like in our space, like design-driven places are kind of allergic to traditional, you know, press. So
we're in advertising, so it would make sense that you'd be allergic to tradition, right?
Yeah, we're like burned out on it. We see it for the kind of bullshit that it is, right?
Yeah.
So, and Buck's no different. SciOp was the same way. They were like, ugh, you know, like
every agency has a different story.
Right, exactly, right. So I talked to them for a while, and working with Ryan Honey and Orion Tate, who are two of the three founders, and then a woman named Madison Wharton, who's the COO. And I was like, man, these people are they're so approachable and they're so nice and reasonable. And so we just kind of brainstormed a little bit of a twist on the job. So my title now is Director of Communications Strategy, which means that, yeah, I still do all the comm stuff. I do PR, social media, I'm taking over the website. You know, it's not just me, there's a team of people, but those are my responsibilities, right? Awards, I mean, that's all enough to keep you busy, you know, a while. But then like a layer above that is like looking out for the Buck brand and the Buck voice, because Buck has been growing. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but like, I think there's like 500 full-timers now across 3 offices.
Yeah, we're speaking to Orion on one of the first streams we did, and was like, it's like, damn man, they've grown so much, and for an animation studio, that's huge.
It's huge,
exactly. Yeah. So what I learned, and I knew I kind of had gotten a sense of this from my friends who work there. It's so interesting because like Buck at the core, Buck is still a design and animation studio. That's the DNA or whatever, you know, overused term. But what I've learned is that there's all this work that's kind of under the surface. Some of it they just can't talk about, right? For big clients, Apple, Facebook, Google, blah, blah, blah. Tons and tons of work for those people that we can't talk about. That's okay. But then there's like all this, like, for instance, there's all these design systems jobs that are actually a huge chunk of the revenue. So for Facebook, for instance, this is kind of an interesting story that we haven't really released yet. So I don't know if maybe I shouldn't be talking about it, but for Facebook, I don't know if you guys remember like a few years ago, like at the beginning of the kind of illustration movement of like, you know, the big legs and like small torsos and like Facebook had like, you know, blue and purple characters and some were orange every now and then, you know, sure enough, within 2 years, everybody in Silicon Valley wanted blue and orange, you know, characters. And the idea was that, you know, it's like we're avoiding, you know, kind of racial issues by choosing these like, you know, untraditional characters, right? But, you know, fast forward to now, it's a different world that we live in. And Facebook, which is very cool, reached back out to Buck. Buck had already done the one illustration system. And I'm like, you know what, let's update this. Let's use like actual skin colors. Let's use like, actual features of people. And so I don't know if it's been released yet, but it's beautiful, like the new system that's been developed. And so Buck is doing all this like deep design thing. There's strategists at Buck, and they're not like cheesy agency strategists. I don't know if you've ever worked with strategists, but good Lord. It's not like that. They're like, these are people who like have a background in design or a passion for design. So I'm just kind of like reeling because there's so much going on. We have this amazing creative technology team that like we're creating games. We have like 4 games in the works. We've got original IP. Yeah, nobody knows about this.
Are they like longer form games as well, not just mobile apps, but like proper games?
It's a mix. Yeah, there's one like hyper casual game that was originally targeted for mobile, but now it's been ported. I don't know what our plan for that one is. We pitched it to a couple of distributors and stuff, and it seems like we may just release it ourselves, and that's really fun, but it's super casual. It's like a one-clicker kind of game.
Oh, cool.
And then there's a puzzler kind of a game that I think has a lot of potential. It's really interesting. And then there's more of a story-driven, not RPG, but it's almost like a graphic novel-y. There's no like panels and stuff, but it's more story-driven. And then there's a driving game, but not like a normal driving. It's all Buck, everything's like.
It's a different twist, right? Different creative.
Exactly. Nothing is like what you would expect it to be. So my job, as I see it, and I think as Ryan and Orion see it, is help get the word out about that stuff, but do it in like a Buck way, don't be cheeseballs about it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's hard because you want to be
sat
humble.
Sat on like the tube train. Like, hey, did you hear about that new Buck game, Dave? Yeah, sure is good, Brian.
That's how I spend 90% of my time. I just sit on park benches and listen to people's conversations. Yeah, I mean, so I'm right now. I'm on week 3 at Buck, so I'm developing this like big strategy around all this stuff, and I mean, I got really lucky. Like people I work with are super awesome, super smart. It's crazy at Buck, like, and there's lots of shops like this. I don't want to make it sound like every place else sucks, but there's like no egos there, and everybody's crazy talented. So there's everything is collaborative too. So I haven't worked on any one thing by myself, which is kind of amazing because I feel like before this I would find myself in bubbles, or I'd put myself in a bubble, and now it's like just you're always knit with people across the organization. So I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to be really fun and really cool.
Wow. Yeah, it's an interesting time. Like I would like when you announced that you joined Buck, I didn't like it. It felt like quite out of the blue as well. Like I think it sounds like a really great fit as well. I mean, Buck I think one of Buck's big strong points is they hire the right people.
They take time to do that. They do. Yeah. It was kind of out of the blue for me too, to be honest. So the full story is that when I took that job at Gensler a year ago, I actually turned down this job at Buck. Wow. And I kind of dodged a bullet because COVID hadn't happened, and like we were going to move to Brooklyn, which we live in Austin now. We've lived in Austin for 5 years, and it's good and bad. It's in the middle of Texas, which they say Austin is a dot of blue in a sea of red. Although it's changing. I mean, the cities now are all pretty much blue, but Texas is a big state, so there's a lot of red.
I think we'll find that out in like 6 or so hours.
Yeah, God. There was talk early on that Texas might actually swing blue, but I think now they're like, nah, it's going to be red, which is a bummer. But
so that'd be massive for an entire for Texas. Yeah. That'd be nuts. But anyway,
it would be huge. Yeah,
probably avoid politics.
Yeah, probably a good idea. Right? We'll talk about religion next.
Yes.
So Austin's cool. It's a lot of the things that people think it is. It's hard. There's not much of a motion. There's not really any motion scene here or anything like that. So that's a little weird. So we would have had to move. If I would have accepted the job with Buck a year ago, we would have had to move to Brooklyn. Now we love Brooklyn. We love New York, but we have a kiddo 7 years old, and it's tough, So we were ready to do it, but in the end, I chose the Gensler job because I thought I was a design director. I thought I was a creative director type, and also, they had some changes too. So I learned in the year by going to Gensler first, I learned a lot of skills that are actually going to help me $1. So the timing worked out really, really well. So yeah, I think it's going to be good. It's going to be, yeah.
Obviously, you used to live in New York for quite a number of years, and then you moved back to moved to Austin.
Yeah.
Are you at the end of the hopefully soon at the end of the pandemic, fingers crossed, are you going to end up back in New York, or what are you going to continue remotely?
I don't know, possibly. It's interesting because a lot of the people at Buck are digging into the remote thing, moving to Connecticut, or even like one of our CDs is in Richmond, Virginia, and it's working, but at some point it's going to change, right? In the sense that we'll be able to go back to the office.
The big benefit is you do have a bit more control over your quality of life, like to be able to not live in I love New York, but it's an expensive city, crowded and what have you. To have even space like in Austin and what have you is great.
Yeah, I mean, we have a backyard here. We've got plenty of space and all that. It's not a big house, but plenty for us. And that would be, I mean, the place we live in here, which is tiny, 1,800 square feet, in New York would be 3 times as much. Yeah, and that's really tough. And schooling is weird there too. I think it's weird. Like, it's very competitive, and like you end up kind of, you may not go to the school you think you're going to go to, and here it's like you move to the neighborhood, you go to that school. It's very clear. And my son goes to a very good school, like a public school, and so, but we're open to it. We do miss. My wife is from Mexico City, so Lou is her name, and growing up in Mexico City and then living in New York as we did, you get used to a certain culture, a certain pace, a certain way of living that just doesn't exist in Austin. In New York, she felt like she had a lot of what she had in Mexico City, which is friends and who took the place of family, and we could be with them all the time and go to parks and walk to places and all that. She doesn't even really drive, so living in Texas and not driving is like,
difficult.
It is really.
Well, living anywhere other than New York and not driving in America is difficult.
I mean, I heard something recently. I think I can't remember who said it. Somebody will probably tell us that what is it? There's like 3 or 4 great cities. I think there's 4 cities in the United States. It's New York, LA, San Francisco, and New Orleans. Every place else is just Cleveland. And I'm sure I got that wrong, but the spirit is right. And Austin, as cool as it is, once you get out of like this little core center of it, it's just like every other American city. It's a bunch of shopping centers and highways and stuff.
It's got barbecue though. I mean, Franklin's is good.
Yeah, it's funny. I've never wanted to stand in line for 2.5 hours to get barbecue, so I've never had Franklin's. Although he did open a restaurant here called Loro, and it's a collaboration with a guy who owns a couple Japanese restaurants. So it's Japanese meets barbecue, and they have a brisket there. I think it's like it's got a little, I want to say it's like a Thai chili. I can't remember what it is now. My friends are going to kill me for not knowing, but it's really good. So it's a way to get Franklin's without spending 2.5 hours in Franklin.
Piqued Thiago's interest, because like Thiago's a really good cook, and used to be a sushi chef, didn't you?
Yeah. I work as a sushi chef for.
Now you're a private sushi chef too.
I just do it for myself. Yeah. But,
oh man, that's actually really difficult.
I like the mix of barbecue and the sushi.
Man, I bet it could be really fun. Like seriously,
I did once. I did once.
Or is this like Hawaiian pizza territory? I don't know.
I did like a nigiri, the rice with the fish on top. I stand there. I use a picanha. It's like a Brazilian steak.
Yeah, man, I know what that is.
Just slice thin, almost raw on top.
Hell yeah.
That sounds amazing.
And I did a sausage rolls, makis with sausage as well. Work well.
That sounds really good. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Quite good.
There's another place here. Do you know what bao are? Those little round buns.
Wow.
And they have bao with brisket in it, and it's
nice.
God, it's so good, man. The problem is because bao are so fun to eat. You can eat like 4 or 5 of them, and then you're like, oh my god, it's like a brick.
I remember being obsessed with bao when I was a kid. Like, I didn't know what it was, but we went to Chinatown in Manchester. I was like, man, this bread is so soft and so sweet. I just want more. It's like, it was awesome.
It's perfect kid food. Yeah. It's interesting. Austin actually has a really good food scene for the size that it is, you know, and there's a lot of
Yes.
people moving here from other places that are bringing a little more culture. So it's getting better. I still believe, you know, there's value though in person, you know, connections, and being in a studio. I really miss it, man. Like being around people, especially as a person who's not, you know, I'm just a professional cheerleader. That's all I've ever really been. If we're just honest with if we're honest with each other, that's all I've ever been. And that means I need to be around people who are making the work, you know, and I love it. And when I was at PsyOp, you know, I got to choose where I sat, and I would bounce between sitting with the designers who were just banging out style frames, and PsyOp has incredible designers, or I would be sitting with the creative technology team who would, you know, were also doing crazy stuff. And so I'm hoping that once COVID loosens up, or whatever that means, that we'll be able to go, you know, that I'll be able to go visit both the Buck LA office and the Buck New York office. We have an office in Sydney too. I don't think I'm going to be getting over there anytime soon. And we have another office I'm probably not supposed to talk about that'll be opening somewhere else soon. But the LA office sounds incredible. I don't know if you guys
sounds very chilled from what I gather.
Yeah, well, it's massive too. It's 100,000 square feet. It's like a campus.
Damn.
Which is, I mean, it's like
you can
several
socially distance quite easily there.
Yeah, totally. You could work there for a week and nobody would even know you're there. And then in Brooklyn, the office seems super nice. It's down in what's called Industry City, I think is what they call it. And it's like a new development, and it's apparently really beautiful. I've never seen either one of them because I started, you know, now. So I'm excited to you know, go and visit and connect with people in person, because I'm a firm believer in that, especially as like a communications guy. You know, you got to build trust with people. And the only way you can do that, I think, is by hanging out, you know, just doing stuff together, you know, having long nights and stuff every now and then helps. And, you know, maybe getting a little drunk, and that's always good too. That helps.
That's always good bonding though. Also, you know, if you meet people in person, you can use that trope like, hey man, I thought we were friends.
Yeah.
You're going to start getting people saying, oh, you remember I sent that email, you never post my work, you know.
Oh, actually, that reminds me, I was going to ask you earlier. Yeah, do you ever, like, obviously running like motionographer and what have you, and speaking to a lot of companies, do you ever have kind of, I mean, I remember just from my small link in the chain, as it were, there's a lot of kind of potential conflicts of interest where you have like friends, companies asking you to post their work, and like obviously you can't, you know, you have to remain impartial. I'd normally go, you have to submit it over here, speak to Justin, bye.
Yeah.
I found that really tricky to deal with.
Yeah, you've probably felt it, right? I mean, I'm trying to look up the name of this guy real quick. I will name names. Let me see if I can find him though. There's a very specific story around this. Well, we had one contributor who I won't name, who would post once a year, and he would basically post like his reel. And I was like, bro, I think the last time he did it, I had to just take it down. I was like, what are you doing? And he thought, oh, I thought that was okay. Like I thought, you know, and I thought, well, I saw it as a failure on my part. I didn't explain, you know, the ground rules. And so I wasn't really that mad. It was just kind of funny. But there was a time, actually pretty early on, like I was still finishing up school, I think. And I went up to New York to meet with Carlos or something. And this guy, Lamore Sure, do you know him? Lamore was one of the founders of Eyeball NYC, which is...
No, I don't think I've spoken to him or anything.
No.
Yeah, super talented guy and like a real visionary. I mean, he was way ahead of things. Like he
Are Eyeball still going?
Well, they
closed,
so
I remember
they merged with Modus Operandi, and I think now they're called ModOp.
Okay.
I don't know the full story, but they had kind of been going more towards like brand and strategy and stuff. And part of that was Lamore. He was a very strategic guy. So he invited me to lunch, and I was so green. I still didn't understand how to handle these things, you know. And so I was like, okay, let's go to lunch, which is nothing wrong with going to lunch with people. And
no touching.
You know, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of footsie. I guess that's normal. It's a little strange. So then we went to Eyeball, the studio, and I had only, you know, still had only seen a few studios. So I still to this day, I love visiting studios. I think it's really cool. It says so much about a place, you know, the way their studios are set up, or you know, what's on the walls or whatever, you know. And so I was like, cool, let's go check it out. And he and I think his wife had like designed a lot of the studio. It was an amazing space, beautiful. And I saw some people I knew working there. I was like, oh my God, cool. And so he took me to his office and was like, I want to show you something. So this is back when we used to have cream of the crop. You remember that like little list on the side? It was like, you know, our favorite 10 or 20 studios, which after a while was like ridiculous because there were too many studios to keep up with, you know. But back then, you know, Eyeball was on the cream of the crop because they did amazing work. And he showed me his website traffic, the traffic to Eyeball's website. And he showed me how high the referral rate was. Like 80% of his traffic had come from motionographers, something weird like that.
Wow,
It's
better be
probably
a
not the
nice
right
dinner.
number. Yeah, right. Yeah. Apparently, it was just lunch, man. What the hell? No, it was kind of like he was doing me a big favor because I think what he was trying to say was, you have some responsibility here. You know, you got to be a little bit careful with this. And it had gone from being a hobby to being like this thing that was like changing, you know, businesses or whatever. And he was cool about it. You know, he didn't like complain or anything. But although I'll tell you what happened then a few months later, we bumped them off the list for whatever reason. You know, maybe Buck took their place or something like that. And man, he got so mad. He was like, hey, like, why aren't we on the list anymore? You know, and I told him why. And
I remember, like, as a bit of background to that, a lot of the people on that list, a lot of the companies on it, it was all done like through voting, through contributors. There was never like any kind of bias. So I just want to put that out
and we
there.
were often voting. We would be voting for competitors, right? Like I wasn't working at a studio at the time, but some of us were, and you know, we knew good work when we saw it. We knew good studios, you know. But I didn't do a good job in so many ways. I didn't do a good job, you know, explaining all that and trying, because we were just making it up as we were going, you know. Part of me wants to try it again. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I learned everything kind of the hard way. And then, you know, social media really changed things because this all was happening, you know. Facebook was around, but Instagram wasn't around. And you know, LinkedIn was just a rinky dink Rolodex basically. And so really it was very hard to find work. You know, you would go, motionographer was really like for some people. Yeah. And Vimeo too, you know, at the same time, you know. But then a few things changed. You know, Facebook changed. The first thing they did, and this is something I don't think most people are aware of or care about, but they used to have pages that were like a really big deal when they first launched them because it was a way that companies could participate in Facebook, you know? So we had a motionographer page that was really popular, and like we got tons of traffic from that page to our website. But then in 2008-ish or 9, maybe around there, Facebook changed the way pages worked. And it was basically, they were like, hey, we're like, you know, this could be a huge revenue stream for us. So if these companies are going to post, the only way that stuff is going to show up, you know, in somebody else's feed is if the company is paying, you know, some money to promote the post, you know. So that applied to motionographer too. So our Facebook referral traffic like plummeted to almost zero.
That's crazy.
And then Instagram, yeah, it is crazy. I mean, I didn't realize it at the time, but, you know, you're very dependent upon these things, you know. And now Instagram creates what I call the illusion of a campfire. You know, it's very gratifying to scroll through Instagram and see cool work every day, every hour. You know, I love it. I do it myself all the time. But it's so ephemeral. You know, you'll see something, you may even like it, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to remember that project. I'm going to refer it. You know, I want to see how they did. I want to scrub it, break it down, whatever. And you'll never come back to it. You're going to forget it. And then when you try to find it again, good luck. You know, even if you use their weird bookmarking feature, you know, none of that stuff really works the way it should. So we have this collective amnesia now, you know, and this is not like a dig on young people. We're all doing this. I'm participating in it too.
We have literal amnesia.
Yeah, that's true. And there's no real place now, like a real repository or what I call a campfire for our community anymore. Vimeo used to be it, and it's changed too, right? Their business model has changed. They've been very public about changing their business model. So it's a bummer. And there's an opportunity. I mean, there's a new video hosting site, post.pro, that I hope will get some traction. It's a very difficult business to get off the ground. You know, it requires a lot of capital and
especially
tenacity.
against so many established businesses as well who don't, you know, obviously not the general public out there don't know the difference in terms of like having like a, you know, a nice list rather than a forgettable list, is what you're saying.
Right. Exactly. So part of me wants to tackle it again, like, you know, with a 2020 or 2025 mindset. And it's like, well, what would be useful, now? I still think there's value in, being able to find work and people. Mostly it's about finding people. I think that's the real interesting thing, is like discovering talent, especially like because of diversity being now in the forefront, and it should have been in the forefront a long time ago. We're not a very diverse industry by any measure, but we're working on it, right? And now it's more important than ever, I think, for people to be discovered, individual artists, and it's hard to do that now. It's so I think there's a need somewhere. I just don't know what the solution is.
Yeah, with all these social medias, people just get forgotten more quickly, and I think that's a real problem.
And I think also it's like the first years of motionography. Of course, I don't know if we didn't have as many artists and studios we have now, or we didn't know then as much. I think because early days of internet and communication, with social media. But nowadays, just feel like you said, you're scrolling through Instagram. There's so many people.
I think the software is more accessible as well. So by
and people is learning a lot faster as well.
Definitely, there were definitely fewer places to. I mean, in the early 2000s, it was like a dozen shops that were doing like high caliber work, and that was partially just because it was still new. The whole desktop computing thing is what was fueling all that. After Effects, Flash to a lesser degree, was a kind of entry point. But then After Effects, running on a normal computer, that was crazy, because up to that point you had to have a giant, Flame or some equivalent thing, a Henry or whatever, some giant $500,000 machine that only, two people know how to work. And it took a while for that revolution to kind of, complete itself. And as people jumped on board, that's why we killed the cream of the crop. It was like we couldn't keep up anymore. There's so many studios, so many directors and animators and individuals. And now, you're right, man. I mean, I'm blown away every day on Instagram and then Twitter and other platforms. Is how much good work there is, in every field, not just motion design, but like everything.
It's everywhere now.
Yeah. I'm most excited about the new stuff. I'm excited about is like, the Unreal 5 engine coming out. Yeah, real time. I've been in the real time for a long. I mean, that's really technically kind of where I started, right? With that weird little
I noticed
project
you were using Touch Designer for your AT&T project, which is
that's right. Yeah, and at Gensler they have some really talented Touch Designer artists there, and at Buck we have some really talented Unity artists, and these platforms have gotten so powerful, and the barrier to entry is lowering and lowering and lowering. Unreal 5 with like the nanite thing, which is basically unlimited geometry and the real-time global illumination. It's like, oh my God, what? Dude, like this shit like 5 years ago would have taken hours to render on a traditional, render pipeline. And now it's just like happening as fast as you can move your mouse. I don't know what that means for us, for motion designers. I don't think we've even, it's kind of like the whole like 5G marketing. They're like, broadband everywhere. What are you going to do? And everyone's like, watch videos. It's like,
same stuff.
Exactly right. At some point we'll figure out, oh, we can actually do this thing now. And that'll be when it gets really fun. And I guess, VR and AR is still, it's taking longer to take off than I think people wanted.
It's because you have to
does a ton of AR work, but
it's just because you have to have stuff on your face or whatever. It's like it's got an inhibitory factor.
Yeah, exactly.
As soon as we solve that, and I think we're getting there with phones and what have you.
AR is a little bit.
You'll get there, but VR. As much as I love VR, I think it's a great space, but it's just not. It's never really going to happen unless it's just like a pair of glasses like
tiny. Yeah, I know, and it seems a long ways off. I'm grateful that the Quest 2, big step forward, but like it's like step 2 on like the 100 steps or whatever. Buck does a ton of AR work, but it's all like it's filters and things like that, using the camera phones, and I think that's smart. That's a great way to get into it. But the VR stuff is
blush cheeks on people, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. They did a really nice one for voting. Jenny Womberg is one of the creative directors who I met her when she was at SCAD back in the day. She does really good work. For AR, she just understands it really well, and I mean, a lot of people do. So yeah, real time is, I think, just super exciting. It's fun. I also love gaming, so I like this. I like the line between gaming and real-time storytelling has completely blurred, right? I recently played What Became of Edith Finch, which was created by the same people who created a game called The Unfinished Swan. The Unfinished Swan is probably Yeah,
That's
it's
an
like one of
amazing
my
looking game. Like the art direction of that is
it's
awesome.
so cool. Yeah, because you start off. My son, who at the time I was playing and he was much younger, but you start off and you're just in a white void, right? There's nothing, and you can't even see your own handwriting, right? You just start hitting the trigger button and you're throwing black paint, right, into a white void. And as the paint hits a wall, it paints the wall, right? So you start to uncover, and so the game plays with that mechanic, and then it has this beautiful story, kind of like a child's dream, you know, and it's so nice. And so what became of Edith Finch is like what they did. It took them like 6 years or something. It's what they did when they had a little more funding and all that. But I love these storytelling. And Gone Home was an early one that, you know, they take you through these journeys. It's non-linear. You can go, you know, however you want to go through it, but there's still a story. You know, I love that kind of stuff. I also love the games that are kind of like socially minded. Like, did you ever play Papers, Please? Do you know that game?
No, what's that?
It's wild. It's like it's kind of a lo-fi, like 8-bit looking game. It's got cool graphics though, but
actually, that kind of reminds me. Isn't it kind of funny? Like, we've got all this graphical power and technology, and then we resort back to like 8-bit, 16-bit era graphics.
Yeah, never underestimate nostalgia, right? It's crazy.
I've got a shelf full of Game Boys back there, so I fully respect.
Do you really?
No, seriously.
God, I love it. Oh, it's awesome.
I'll not bring them over, but I do.
Yeah.
I'll show you after the talk.
Yeah. Papers, Please, though, you play a border guard in a fictional country. Like, it's like an Eastern Bloc, you know, Soviet era country, but it's a fictional country. And these people come in and you have to, you're a passport control officer. You're checking their passport, which sounds like the most boring game ever. And it kind of starts out, and it is pretty boring. And then
I've heard of this, but I've not played it. I've not read much about it, but now it rings a bell.
It's amazing because what ends up happening is you start getting these scenarios where you have to balance your life and your safety against their life and their safety. And it becomes poetic. I don't know. There's games are amazing now. I mean, they've gotten, and I still love all the traditional stuff like GTA and all that crap, but it's such a cool space.
Actually, yeah, I just finished. Do you remember Zelda, the Minish Cap on Game Boy Advance? I never played it until recently, and it's awesome. It's weird.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's one of the few Zelda games or Nintendo games that was developed by Capcom. But the animation and stuff is lovely, and
Capcom, they do good stuff, man.
Recommend it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But
are they still doing Zelda?
Nintendo are, they've got there's a new Breath of the Wild coming out pretty soon, but it's just what's it called? It's like Hyrule Warriors. So it's all like people fighting each other, which I'm not particularly.
Oh, is it like a turn-based thing, or is it more of the real time?
It's not turn-based. It's real time, but it's just like hordes of stuff coming at you.
Like a hack and slash kind of thing. I got you.
Might be a little bit derogatory for it, but I would not. You know, it looks nice, looks great, but I'm just not into it. But Breath of the Wild 2 should come out, I guess, sometime next year. And the Breath of the Wild 1 was amazing. So that's.
It's all Switch. Yeah, they're not. Have they announced their next gen platform, or they're going to soon, aren't they?
No, there's always rumors about a Switch Pro or whatever.
Okay.
I don't know. Like it would be nice if they brought out like an updated hardware version of it. So I mean, they did it with the DS, they did it with the 3DS. So it's not out of the realms. So maybe like a bump up in graphic fidelity to proper 1080 all the time rather than flexible resolutions and
that would be cool.
Fixed 30 or 60 would be great.
Yeah.
But to bring it back on topic.
It's all on topic.
It's all on topic. You mentioned a little bit earlier about Instagram, and I was wondering, all these people paying ad revenues to get their sponsorship, whatever. But I want to get your thoughts on a few things because it's kind of something that's been bugging me for a while. But it's basically things with motion graphics and the way things have evolved. So you get like influencer accounts for animation and what have you. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, there's one called, and I'm kind of reluctant to name accounts, but I'm going to anyway, so fuck it. But there's there's Motion Graphics Collective, which is quite a large one, like a couple 100,000 followers now. But first of all, I question the validity of the number of followers. I suspect, and I'm happy to be wrong, that they bought followers. And the other thing is there's lots of questionable content that they post. So what that brings me around to people paying to post on these websites rather than legitimate good content. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on this because it feels that's the way the industry is going. Like, you have to pay to play.
Yeah. Well, right, and I was talking about that earlier with Facebook, right? I mean, that's what the model they adopted, and it makes sense that it's happening, elsewhere. And again, I like the old like Walt Disney quote: "Is quality will out," meaning like quality will always win, right? It's always going to win out. And I think we early on with Motionographer, we made a very conscious decision to not have any advertising and not obviously not do sponsored posts or anything, but there were other people who were doing it, and you probably can't remember any of those sites anymore because they're all gone, right? Now the accounts on Instagram,
they got bought for a fortune.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, dumb me. I should have just done what they did. But the accounts on Instagram, I don't know. I don't follow those. I see them, it's like reposting accounts and stuff like that. It's bizarre. Like, I guess it's just to try to make a quick buck, but I think they're going to just, they you know what they feel like? They feel like vape shops. Nothing against vaping. Well, okay, some things against vaping, but like a vape shop has that like kind of like skeezy feel to it. You kind of going like,
like in London, it's like again? Camden Town. That's what
oh yeah,
vape
like
shop
Camden,
feels like.
Camden Lock, Camden Town, exactly like Camden Town. Oh my God, that's great. First time I went to Camden Town, I was like, this is just the world's biggest vape shop.
Is this London? Oh shit, man! It's like when we did we do the live shows. Like every time, there's always something that you can't account for.
I would have loved to go to that though. That's fun. You did them in like bars or something, or
yeah. It's kind of on the back of a bar, has a massive space, and we have a stage, and we get some time, like about 350 people. It's like,
wow, man, that's awesome.
How did you find like F5, like running F5 must have been like logistically just
it was very
mind-blowing.
Difficult. Yeah, that was like my first kind of EP job, really. It was difficult. I mean, Carlos, that was really his idea. He had been involved in OFFF Off, festival, and he brought it to New York one year, and he thought, okay, I kind of want to do this, but I want to do it a little differently. So he had a lot of ideas about how to do F5, which I think was great because I didn't, I've never been like really an events guy. So I learned a ton, I had like a $500,000 budget or something, and like putting on an event in downtown New York, working with union labor for the first time I ever done that.
Was that budget through sponsorship deals? I take it.
We had once, well, actually that year, I'm not sure we even had a sponsor. We did, the tickets were never very cheap, and that was partially because it was in New York.
They were good value though. I got to say that because, you had the drinks deal. So, so man, you had basically paid for all the drinks for all the people for two and a bit days, which is, I think that's pretty good value to me.
Yeah, that was the idea. It was supposed to be like a party.
That was crazy.
There
was a black market in a ticket trading.
Exactly. A little shadow economy. I learned what I learned from that though is that I don't ever want to produce another event in my life. It's just not me. I'm just not. What happens is you build up, and I learned this. I was in theater in high school quite a bit, and I had the same experience there. You build up for weeks and weeks and months, right? And then the event happens, the show, the performance, the event, whatever it is, and in 1 or 2 days, it's over like that. And it just feels like this vacuum, in your life.
What do I do now?
Yeah. Oh. And for some people, I think for actors, they, stage actors, it's the applause. The applause is their food, right? It keeps them alive.
Light.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, who cares about that? Like, I never felt very fulfilling to hear applause when I was in bands and stuff, same thing. Although I do miss playing live shows. That's a little different, but, so the event thing was, I'm really glad I did it. And then the next two, I didn't direct them. Ventura Castro directed them. And I was just doing like speakers and logistics and stuff, more EP type stuff. And that was better. So I learned a lot about myself through that.
Yeah, I can imagine how much work goes into that because me and James, even we've been doing almost 12 years, Evo, and we used to do every 2 months. Hope that goes back when this COVID go away. But we're always talking about, we've been talking like for years to do a big show. and it just like every time we looking into that, it's just to find venue to, it's just like
a lot of work, man.
It's too much work,
It's a lot of work and a lot of money up front too. Like it's a lot of risk, I remember when oh my gosh, when the blend guys were reaching out, Jorge reached out and he was basically like, we were thinking about doing an event. Like, what did you learn from F5? I told him everything. And he took, a lot of notes to heart, I think. And I can tell for them, they do it once every 2 years and it's still a lot of work. There's no way around it. It's just a ton of work.
Yeah, you need to have that like financial security and also kind of like infrastructure in terms of work just to get it produced, done correctly. And I don't think people understand how much money and how much time it takes. Like especially the problem is we run SNE Drink in London and it's friggin' expensive to rent anywhere in any kind of capacity. And the same for you guys in New York.
Yeah, it's really tricky.
In New York. Yeah.
But I think the first F5 was completely different. I think the way you guys put the show was I was quite used to off and but the first one was
so like, that's our cue.
I think we got you back.
Is your camera working?
Yeah.
There we go. I just got my internet connection is unstable. I think my son just jumped on a class. My son takes Spanish classes a couple times a week, and I think it just started up.
That's good.
Oh, we should probably wrap this up pretty soon because obviously you've got stuff to do.
But this has been great, man. I really appreciate you guys doing this. It's really good to connect with you guys, and what you're doing is awesome. And I'm glad you're keeping the community going. I think it's very important.
Man, I had a really good question I want to ask you, but I'm not going to be able to remember it until after the stream's finished, and I can't remember what it was.
All right, well, you can fire it over to me if you want.
I write everything down normally. I'm like, that's a good idea, and I forgot to write it down. Anyway,
describe my entire life.
You're getting old, James.
I know. What can I say?
Yeah. No, but it's been really a pleasure because me and James been talking so long to bring you on the show.
Oh, that's nice.
Just so people hear a little bit more about you.
Gaga's been for bringing you. I've been against bringing you.
Yeah, James was so upset he didn't post that last job he did before.
Yeah, right.
Said we're not bringing Justin.
Screw that guy.
Yeah. Man, it's just like to thank you so much for what you did for the community. I think special. I think for the young generation, they probably don't really know. Like things you talk like.
There's probably a good amount of people who wouldn't be where they were today if it wasn't for your blog in some way, shape, or form, or a good number of companies as well.
And you probably thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's I think made a massive, huge difference on the industry, and
sure.
It's a lot of things change in the last 2 years, but I think we all thankful, how motionography started and helped so much, and then not just helping.
Thanks for making animation great again.
Yeah. We should have wear our cap today. James.
I was thinking about that. We made some hats. I'll bring one over.
Yeah. Right.
We
need blue ones that say that.
Yeah, we have the.
We made our own.
Oh my God! Look
hats.
at that. You actually do have one. I thought you were.
Yeah, we have
kidding.
plenty of them.
We used to give them away at our show, but now we just hoard them. So the downside of if Biden wins is like we've got a whole load of stock to get rid of.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I hope you guys have that problem, if I can say that. But no, I appreciate. I mean, it's really nice of you guys to say all that, But I mean, it's always been about the work, If it wasn't for people like you guys creating it, there would be nothing to talk about or get excited about. So the fact that you're still doing it and making amazing work, both of you, that's the inspiring thing, because it's very easy to get burned out. And I understand what people do. So that's off to you guys for doing what you do. And I'm just grateful to be able to chat with you about it. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think and I think you guys helped so much, even on the background, I think motionography wasn't just about showing the work, I think was kind of a big community as well. Like I met so many people through motionography. Like
Cool.
and I think that made a lot of difference in the industry. I think people from my time, and
that's cool.
That was really important.
Oh, that's great.
Did you ever get like a motionographer tattoo? I'm sure you've got a tramp stamp.
I don't have a single tattoo anywhere on my body, unfortunately. I think if I got a tattoo, it wouldn't be anything to do with motion. It wouldn't be anything to do with motion graphics, I don't think.
You can do a key.
Really? Definitely.
I would do like some kind of a black flower or something kind of goth. I have like a dark goth. I have like a metal side to me that I think would need to come out a little bit. I do love tattoos. I just don't have the courage to get one.
You could get like an obituary tattoo.
There you
the
go.
band obituary, the artwork is amazing. That would be great.
Oh, it is really cool. I was into a lot of those bands when I was younger, Sepultura and Obituary. And
we've brought Sepultura up before, haven't we, Thiago?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was
I just learned about a band that's been around for a bit, but I didn't know about them until recently. Gutter Phenomenon. I really like them a lot. Do you know? Oh man, they have an album that came out in 2008 or 9. That's really good. I mean, their new stuff is cool too, but this album, Apocalypse Now, or is that what it's called? Every Time I Die.
Spotify?
Yeah, Every Time I Die is the name of the album. And if you like metal at all, it's worth a listen. I love it. Now it's like my new jam now.
Were you in like a metal band then? Was it like a deep throat singing?
Yeah, in my first band in like middle school, like 6th and 7th grade. And then I discovered drugs and got into like funk music. Wow. So I basically was like, I chilled out. I just way chilled out. And like the bands I was in were like more like 311 kind of,
all right.
And then
but
in
now
college,
you're back.
Yeah, right back to my roots.
Like, why is Dad on the drugs again? I don't know.
Right.
Oh, God.
And on that note,
there you go. Great place to end.
Yeah.
So join us for our next show is going to be on the 17th of November, where we have Daniel Savage, which should be really interesting as well. Yeah. So that should be good fun. I hope he's confirmed it. If not, we'll have someone else.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
That's the way we roll. It's always. It's always
2020. You don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah,
we might not even be alive in 2 weeks' time.
That's true.
It's true. It's true. But the shows keep going if we're not alive. Well, that's why we too. We hope just one die.
We're actually, but we're just deep fakes right now.
You're zombie proof. Oh, good. Nice. By the way, did you guys see the deep fake that Matt Stone and Trey Parker did? The sassy Fred Sassy.
Yeah. So good.
It's amazing. The quality of the deep fake is insane. It's also hilarious. But yeah, look up Fred Sassy.
Like when I watched it, it's amazing. But doesn't it make you question, do you really need to hire certain actors or actresses? Like what's the legality? Do you own your own IP? I
don't know. Did you see somebody, for the what was the Han Solo movie, Solo? Somebody deep fake, like basically they're like, okay, I didn't like the guy who played Han Solo, so I just took a young Harrison Ford and deep faked young Harrison Ford onto that guy's before, and it looked better than I was like, oh my God, this is wild. Yeah. I don't know what this is going to mean for all of us. Yeah,
and in the same realm, I know you have to go soon, but like, did you see also like Kanye West present to?
Oh yeah, the hologram.
Yeah, of her dad.
Can you imagine how much money he spent on that? How much money and time? Oh my God!
I really hope he got like an R2D2 to present it to
her. Nice.
Cool, but so we're gonna let you go. You got a call.
All right, yeah, I do in 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Yeah, sorry.
Right, gents. No, that's great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. Again. Yeah, it was really good. Thanks so much. Yeah, and fingers crossed for you guys tonight.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Cheers,
see you guys.
Take care.